getting in, but he'll show up at the 9 in the. So we should see him up here on the screen, and I think Councilor Rivera. At some point. Yeah.
I'd like to call the City of Hood River Budget Committee meeting fiscal year 2025-26 on May 14th to order. And then I'm looking for make a motion to approve the meetings from May 7th.
Do we have minutes already?
Oh, no.
Really? No.
Oh, okay. Oh, it just says approval of meetings minutes. So.
We have the minutes. Oh, yes. So, yeah, I can think of. So, yep, if folks have reviewed, we have a motion.
Okay.
I'll make the, sorry, approve the meeting minutes from May 7th.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Aye.
So these are snacks in the other room over there. About here, if anybody needs anything. If you are away from the microphone, please remember to speak up. There was some staff and folks having a problem hearing last week, so hopefully they're hearing me. Councilor Subpoena will be here in a little bit, and a couple people are going to be attending online. Looks like they're right there. So I'd like to hand it over to the department head presentations.
Great. So today we're talking about the general fund, so and building fund, I believe. So it looks like we are starting with our police chief, Neil Holstein.
Yeah, so before Neil starts. That's how somebody gets paid.
Yeah, great. You're kind of surprised.
I don't know, your hand behind your back. You got natural. So Abigail had circulated some questions that have come through to the extent that they're related to things that we're talking about today. I just want to reiterate it. So in the book, you'll notice that there is a sort of higher than average increase in the police salaries. We talked about overall salaries about 6.4% increase. The police department's a little bit higher. Over the last year plus, the police department's experienced a lot of turnover. And so what we are approving and proposing in this budget is an over-hire position. So it is an extra position. The police department is currently vacant. But the idea is to hire an additional police officer that would provide for an extra reserve officer, right? We are experiencing a lot of turnover in the police department. I don't think that for reasons that Bethany can get into, I'd like to know date anytime soon. Excuse me. And so the idea is to overhire a position prevents situations like that in the past where we're understaffed. So anyway, I want to, it's not specifically called out. It doesn't show up in our FTE because the position is not filled, but there is an extra position.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you this evening. One thing I'd like to say, last week Chris did an exceptionally wonderful job. I've done this budget. I think this is my 13th year. Outstanding work, and I kudos to him that presentation. I really appreciate it. So those that have been on it in the past, the detail was incredible. So general fund budget. Hood River Police Department is under the general fund on page 30 of your binder. I'm going to go through a few slides, just real brief, just to kind of quick overview of what's going on. As he said, that's some turnover, and then we'll go into the budget numbers. If you look at my numbers, I didn't increase much, very many line items, a few different things once we get to that point. So here's my presentation. See if I can get it to work. It's not up. Right there. Do I have to hit share?
You might need to click in the
Oh,
screen.
there we go. We got it now. Okay. So I just did a quick graph on what our department looks like. Chief is myself. I have one lieutenant. He's out of the association, out of the union, so he's a non-bargaining. He's kind of my right-hand person as far as when it comes to discipline and stuff like that, everyday operations. He kind of shadows my schedule with the day difference and such. So we have one detective for the Hood River Police Department. And then we have one community service officer, and I have one admin that works the front office. When I say admin, she does all the records requests, district attorney's information, inputs of all the citations, even though we have a separate municipal court, we're still required to input every citation we write, every crime that's been arrested for, we have to put that in for the FBI numbers and such. So it's a pretty detailed day-to-day operation. Floods us on a Monday. So over the weekend, you have, several days off, and then requires her to do a lot of work with money. We have 3 sergeants. Those are our frontline supervisors, we call those. They do the day-to-day operations as far as boots on the ground, overseeing patrol of the operation. Most of those guys work 4 P to 2 A out of 1 day shift that kind of swings both ways depending on vacations and such. And then patrol. It shows 10 patrol. I put 10 on there, but that does that over hire that Chris was talking about. We have 9 patrol officers with the city of Hood River. And then in the far right, we haven't got to, we have 1 parking enforcement officer, which is Miss Kendall at this time. Here's a little full-time certification, what we've had in the last, 17 years, it looks like. We're at the same level of hire as of 2020% as to date. I did put in that 1 over hire, which shows to 16. So this would actually put us 1 over with that over hire since 2007, 2008. As those that have lived in our area, our call load, our population, as far as tourism stuff, is astronomically increased and was calls for service. So we're doing a lot for the same what we had in 2008. It actually goes back even farther than that. I didn't want to go back, to 2000. Staffing experience. This one is very interesting. I wanted to kind of bring to attention where we're at. I think every workforce has seen it. We're seeing those that have been in a kind of a longevity and kind of loyalty of agencies. They're filtering out and for retirement purposes. And we're seeing a lot of new hire. So our Hood River Police Department, this includes everybody in my staff. We have 8 staff members currently under 5 years of service or experience with our department. Very low numbers. And then the top is 20 plus years. What is scary there is that includes me, 2 my lieutenant, 1 sergeant, and a detective, which that detective is looking, he's already got one of those. I can't wait till I retire timers on his phone. Probably within the next 12 months, we'll probably see him, separating and working on the golf course. He's telling me. And that number of 8 actually is not even including a potential new hire, that 1. And then we also currently have another position that's retired, and we'll probably eventually hit a number of 10 within under 5 years of service with our police department. Here's our onboarding of 3 new recruits within the last year since I saw you last. We have definitely had a turnover, trying to find people, 1 to fill positions, and 2 just on qualified applicants that meet our background and site. So we have Connor Wells upper left, Christian Galvez on the far right, and then the bottom is Ty Walker. We picked him up from Public Works, so we gained. Unfortunately, they backfilled. He didn't smile. So that's where we're at now. So the far left is Connor Wells at the top. He actually is currently, he's finally after about a year. He's currently filling a position as far as on the schedule without a field training officer or shadow. So he's working a day shift at this time. Our far right, Christian Galvez just graduated from the police academy, and he currently has an FTO. He's looking about another, I think it's about 14 weeks. So he'll be shadowed and required by DPSST, the state of Oregon, to meet minimum requirements and hours shadowed before he can actually fill shift on his own. And then the bottom, Ty, he actually graduates this Friday. So we're excited to get him back, and we'll have all 3 back in the city as far as working shifts, but shadowing 2 will be shadowing, 1 is on his own. So, and then that leaves us the 1 overhire that we currently have in our staffing level. Calls for service. Calls have definitely gone down from the previous year. So it just kind of shows in 08, we had 15 officers, 5,900 calls for service. This last year, we had just under 10,500, just over, excuse me. Substantial increase, but same staffing level. We kind of get into the report writing where we're at. We definitely see a 2023 to 2024, our calls for service in regards to report writing definitely went down about 400. A little bit of that's due to, we'll see a little bit later, arrests have gone down, warrants have gone down, and those all require some kind of written documentation. I think we saw a great flood right after COVID when people failed to appear in courts and such. We did a lot of cite and release. I think we've finally played catch up around here as far as those that have been stopped or contacted in regards to a warrant or such. You'll see that in the numbers in a minute. Here's the arrest. Again, 2023, we're at 1171, and then this last year, we're at 743. You'll see in a minute, I'll have a graph showing some of the categories that went down: DUI, warrants, thefts, and again, those, I believe some of those are due to COVID, especially the thefts. When you saw property crimes there for a while, Measure 110, where people weren't being held accountable for the overuse of or carrying of drugs. Our community is starting to catch up with some of that. As far as you steal in Walmart or something like that, you're going to be cited for a crime or arrested for a crime. Here's a little breakdown, like I stated. If you look at the top, that was one of the most drastic, and a lot of that number came out of, I believe, COVID, 230 in 2023, right after COVID. We took no one to jail. Everything was cite and lease unless it was a major felony case and you actually go to jail. But other than that, people wouldn't be retained in the jails due to the COVID spread. DUIs, we talked a little bit about that last year, about the pinnacle 294. We did get a grant through the state that as a prosecutor for this circuit court area. That was due to those numbers. So district attorney is definitely benefiting from a position that's being funded through the state because of those numbers. And we're seeing a little bit of overtime budget and stuff. We're catching up with cases now, almost 3 years old. So it's been great to see someone in that position to just dedicated to those crimes. Anything else that really, theft was another one that I was looking at that substantially went down. We saw a lot of, like I say, property crimes, thefts from stores and such. As we used to see, I don't know if you can see in the news, social media and such, but that's definitely gone down with us. They're still happening, but not like it was happening, especially during the COVID seasons. Drugs, just a little quick snap. Here's what we've been doing as far as some drugs and activity. These are standard traffic stops, for the speed or such, and then the officer looks a little far beyond what's going on and what is occurring. There was a short time with our staffing level. I actually sent out a memo staying be more reactive than proactive because we really couldn't lose people leaving the city limits to go to Norcor. Charges like this, you'd be going to Norcor due to felony charges now. So some of our drug activity that we do get based on traffic stops and such wasn't happening just because of the fact we weren't out there stopping cars and contacting people because we couldn't afford to lose people outside our city limits for major calls. I wanted to make sure they were available for calls as far as those that pay taxes, and we're not at Norcor 20 miles away. So I sent a memo again, just saying, hey, we need to be more reactive than proactive. So we saw that definitely lessen the crimes and the arrests for drugs and such. Another kind of a snapshot. This particular one, the one before, those that note, blue pills, fentanyl, far upper right, middle there, bottom left or bottom right, blue fentanyl with some methamphetamines and such to the sides that are more the clear meth. Here's pretty much looks like all related to methamphetamine. Just a quick snapshot, get a little bit of money out of it too with scales for delivery. And we're getting some guns. We're still getting guns on our traffic stops and such. These were 3 guns that 3 different incidents where they were illegally carried, or some of them have been stolen, such, or modified to where they're not legally obtained. So, and this is our snapshot of a small piece of our department. This is just kind of overview of our training. We had like 1,140 hours of training, broke down about 61 hours per officer this last year. And then we had reserve officers, also volunteers that help out that had 161 hours. So, community engagement, we were still successful enough we really enjoyed communicating or connecting with the community. Just a quick snapshot of what we did this last year with the officers involved. Little guy wearing the low-grade vest bottom left, love it. Future firefighter probably. Here's the Halloween, baseball, House of Delancey. And code enforcement and parking. This was the note I said. We lost Marty Morgan, 11-year community service officer, left us last month in April 30th to retire and move to the Midwest. We're currently in the process of filling that position. It's kind of a technical position. He handles all evidence and such. So right before he left, we had to do a full audit of our evidence room. When anybody transitions to the new position of evidence tech, we're required to go to every single piece and get audited and make sure we have a piece of paper related to a number and we have all the evidence. That was done prior to him leaving. We currently have our parking enforcement is kind of interim that position. So Jennifer Kendall, those of you who might see her on the streets and stuff, she's been doing that. That's a position that's one important because it does code, but also it is really responsible for the district attorney's office for discovery of evidence and such. Legislative change, it used to be we could get evidence within, a week or so. Now with legislative mandates, when someone's been arrested, but it has to be available upon arraignment. So it's a very quick turnaround for burning, and everybody now wears body cams, in-car video systems, or anything else that we may have has to be burned and set up digitally. Everything's done through the cloud, but it's definitely a time-consuming thing. Parking tickets, I just want to get a quick snapshot on that. 2023, I think we talked about a little bit of revenue. It was 52.56. This last year is 48.19. I think a little bit of that is one, Chris hit on it. The compliance is definitely, we've seen a lot better compliance based on our new app program. It gives notifications. So those people that actually know that they're due to pay, they actually pay. And then a little bit of that cross training with Jen for the last couple of months. She hasn't been out there as much to be able to hit the parking enforcement. So a little bit of snapshot on what's happening in parking for those that might be interested in it. This is actually a cumulative of actual citations that were fines and also warnings involved. There's a couple of highlights I wanted to note. Those that are on the council, we actually adopted a 168-hour rule. That is, let's see if I can find it. It was in midpoint right there. Let's see right there. Parking over 1 week. That was from in 2023, 71, 165 this last year. I asked Jen, fill me in a little bit. It seemed really high. So anybody that was called in or concerned of someone parked over 168 hours, those aren't all like traffic citations that you pay. Those are warnings. And she said 99% of those are in compliance once they put a warning sticker on there and then have the new ordinance saying, hey, here's our ordinance, and they comply and move or something like that. So it's been a good thing for us. We actually, we get calls and concerns, but we don't have those neighbors now that call and said, it's been like this for 1 to 2 years, nothing we can do about it. So you're seeing a flow of change as far as vehicles parking long terms and such. We've always had the RV trailer parking 72 hours or longer, you can't park there. This has definitely helped with the day-to-day driver, especially the converted vans and such. Code enforcement, here's codes. This goes up every single year. Code enforcement has definitely increased over the years. It probably be actual position in itself. I mean, it's not a time consuming it takes as far as the day-to-day, just boots on the ground kind of stuff. We had a 382 close reported cases out of the 393. So we get really quick compliance and good compliance when we do contact people and deal with it. We still have 10 open cases. I didn't ask Jen, since she's kind of new to that position, to what are the 10 open cases that she inherited from Maury. So that's that. It's going to be quick and easy. I'm going to go over a couple of things, then you can ask me questions and such. Another thing I wanted to bring up is our capital. As far as capital numbers and capital vehicle replacement program, that's a fund in itself that Chris tonight will talk about a little bit. I just wanted to note this year we are looking to purchase 4 vehicles, 3 police vehicles, 1 community service officer van or truck. So it's going to be parking / code enforcement. We're going to go from a vehicle that's a full-size truck to a small economical vehicle. 2 reasons: 1, size, and the other is we pushed that one. It was a 10-year vehicle. I pushed it out to 13 years, so it's just due. It's just starting to deteriorate, starting to eat a little bit of antifreeze. So we're kind of concerned about losing the motor eventually out of that one. And then the other 3 are actually patrol vehicles. We're going to replace those due to the vehicle replacement timeline. It's 8 years for those, and those are just due. The goal is to get them. What's happening, as you guys know and have heard several times, that local governments, state bid vehicles are very difficult to get. So we're hoping in this next budget year that we'll be able to get them more quickly. I don't know how Adam is new as far as trucks and such, but police vehicles are very difficult to get. So we're hoping it doesn't carry over for these continue to get pushed. You know, we do save for these, we have the money available in the vehicle replacement program, but it's just nice to be able to stagger those out a little bit more than we've had to in the past. So that's where we're at on that. So other than that, as far as numbers are concerned, I know there was a number related to wages and overtime. It sounded like Chris hit that at the beginning of this. Other than that, I really didn't increase a whole lot. If you'll look to the far right line item, 3% on a couple line items that are needed as far as fuel and uniforms and such. Those are the ones that fuel always goes up and down, so we never know. I always want to be ahead of the game of that. Uniforms per contract and per CBA contract negotiations require one to give them a vest, low-bearing vest, and those. The market has those expires after 4 years, so we have to buy them every 4 years due to an expiration number on them. Are they okay to probably use? Yes, but once the manufacturer puts an expiration date, they have no choice but to replace them. So and those are about $2,100 a pop for a low bearing vest. So one every 4 years. So outside that, the biggest change that you'll probably see is Chris mentioned that this last week was contract services. There was about a 19% decrease. That was due to the new line item for leases and subscriptions that you'll see. Just I think it's below the administrative service line item, and that was just due to Gatsby's requirements to seg those out into an actual different line item than my contracts and services. So, on that, questions?
Awesome. So is this saying basically people are leaving because they're not getting paid enough for the cost of living?
Well, there's twofold in that. One, it costs so much for them to move here and to live on, not to say we don't get paid well, just the cost of housing and stuff is now outpaced their day-to-day living abilities. And two, yeah, there's definitely organizations one will never compete with. Washington State Police, I lost a guy too. I've lost him to Oregon State Police, big organizations, better money. Another one just wanted to retire. He retired, then contracted back with me from a different agency, and he didn't want to work night shifts. So he's like, you know, I don't want to go on a rotation at my age any longer. So he left. The other individual went to the Dallas, more money. Also, they work, it's kind of a hybrid. They work a 32-hour work week, kind of a new emergency service thing as far as the police departments is. You work 32 hours and you pay for 40. So they're looking at some other hybrid ways too, where it's 36 and you do like 2 hours a day of mental health and workouts and such, and you get paid for 40 for the week. So people are just reaching out for those better perks, I would say.
So what's the logic of funding an entirely new position versus spreading that money over the existing staff to try to retain it?
Well, what happens is when we lose someone, or even when we hire a new hire, it takes about a year to even get someone on the schedule.
Got it.
So it's nice to have one because I hear in the grapevine, and I know there's a few guys that have been looking, going through the Washington area. As soon as we lose them, we're automatically minimum a year. I say it takes a minimum a year just to get them on the schedule to fill a shift. We can hire today, but they can't even take a shift on the schedule for a minimum of a year. That's the downside of law enforcement in regards to, it's not a choice by me, it's a mandate by Oregon's legislative rules.
Thank you.
So you wouldn't, is that, okay, go ahead. I'm guessing that's the result in overtime going up so much because you have to have people cover when people.
Well, that's a calculation that Chris inherited and how they calculated that. A little bit of that this last year with we were down like the 4 positions there for a while. We definitely saw an increase there for a while. We try to augment and change shifts around as far as not the same days of the week, but what's happening is the mental stability and such, as you know, in emergency services, it was grinding on the guys. So yeah, I'm picking up 10-hour shifts for that. And another part of that too is my increase over time this year was with a new prosecutor with the district attorney's office. They're actually taking on cases now that have literally been there for almost 3 years, and they're finally putting in the system to actually prosecute it. So we're seeing a lot more overtime in there this quarter.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Chief. great numbers. The thing that we always think about when we talk about all of our housing initiatives, especially middle income housing initiative, is to try to make sure that firefighters, police officers, teachers, live in the community. So I was just wondering if you had an idea of your force currently, how many people do live in the city of Hood River?
The ones that live are probably the top 4 that you see on my graph as far as longevity working here. Anybody I hire now doesn't live in our community at all. The last several I've hired live in the Downs. I've got a guy that lives in Portland, Glenwood, Carson, very few. And then one, like I say, at that top tier, literally that 4, that's what you see that live in our community. Yeah. So me being one of them, but been around for quite a while and definitely purchased before the market. So anyone now, that's one of the things like when they do a Chiefs interview, I'm like, have you looked at housing? And they're like, oh yeah, I looked at a house to buy. No, have you looked at the rental? If you can find one. So that's our, that's probably one of our biggest issues. It's, it's one, it's not like the old place where you go play softball and coach little league and such. You just hope they come to work and want to stay here, that's the goal right now. So, because we can't offer the little nuggets that bigger agencies can, but I think if you got a great environment, great department, you definitely get some loyalty in that aspect of it. But we're seeing a different type of employment employees now too. Definitely not seeing the old time like me. You became in emergency services, you were the gun hotel, you rotted in the patrol car. That really doesn't happen anymore. So
Thank you.
we're good to go. All right, I really appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
I have a question. I think Counselor Mitchell does as well. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. I do have a question about your slides. There in the arrests, there was the other. What does other mean? Back. One more. Right there. 245. What does other mean as far as
Other
arrests?
can be anything outside. You're gonna think the multitude, we have what we call the Bible. Everything that's probably twice as thick as the Bible has every crime you can think of. I just capture a few things in there. So when it's other, it's everything that's you can think of a crime that's not on there.
Okay.
Had one a couple months ago, murder, right? It's not on there. But we had one. We've got 3 people.
Perfect.
North Court for manslaughter. It's not on there. So it's just those. If I did that, we'd probably be on 30 pages. So.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then if you go back one more to your arrest slide, this one, it shows a peak right between 1100 and 1200. Do you know around what time of the month the peak arrests have taken place?
That's a snapshot of a year, but you're looking for a month itself.
Mm-hmm.
I say year round. When you're looking at from 2023,
Okay.
if you look at our warrants and our DUI arrests, I mean that there's a bulk, probably the bulk numbers, would capture that 1100. So
Okay.
and thefts. So you got to think, what are those happening? Warrants can be whenever. DUIs or impaired drivers can be whenever, but the majority are usually after hours, as you would know. So.
Thank you. I'm trying to understand some of our trends that you have here in the data. I have 2 more questions, and then I promise, Counselor Mitchell, you can ask away. So talking about workforce development, I see that you have a reserves program. Is there a similar program that exists within the high school, for example? I know that, for example, Fire has that set up where they have high school volunteers. Is that something that could come to fruition? That way, those that are thinking about what their careers are looking like in their junior and senior years are exposed to this work to potentially retain one of them to, sign on to be a reserve with the hopes that they'll be a police officer?
So the Hood River County Sheriff's Department partners with the Hood River School District, and they have a school resource officer. They actually do actual classes at the high school.
Oh, okay.
We have our officers go out and teach at it. Emily Delancey, I've been to it. So we do a program within the high school. We're a little different than like Fire, is because you can't even be a police officer until you're 21, and we have a little bit more liability.
Oh, okay. I see.
Not to say or anything more than that. Just legislatively, we have a lot of mandates that you have to meet, and you have to meet certain training requirements, even in a reserve. That's why our numbers years ago, you could have 8 to 10 reserves, where today you have 5 to 6. Because the commitment, the hours, you have to meet a minimum hours just to wear a uniform. Everything from ethics, bias training to use of force, that is hands-on to guns and such, so. A lot of requirements in it for other
Yeah.
quite.
Thank you for that. And then as far as your vehicles, one of our goals is to ensure that we are remaining energy efficient. I recognize that it might be a challenge to have a couple of your vehicles be energy efficient, but of the 3 that are patrol cars, are they energy efficient vehicles or the hybrids, anything like that?
So we've always tried to purchase hybrids. The problem is the manufacturers, when they're coming to state bids, they're not making money off the cities and counties. They're looking for the dealerships. That's where they make the big money. And at the end of the day, it's about money, right? So we tried to get hybrids. That's our goal. And we pushed, and we do have hybrids in our fleet. But right now, if you look at any organization, as far as municipalities and local county governments, we're just hoping we get a police car. And if we get one, we're gonna snag it because they're hard to find right now.
Thank you. No further questions for me.
Thank you, Chief, for providing the insight on the staffing challenges, which of course not only are impact a bunch of our city departments, but also city businesses in general. And regarding staffing on one of the many elements of the interesting data that's in this binder for my first budget go around here. On page 9, we talk about all the City of Hood River full-time equivalents through over all departments, and showing data over 20 years. The police department is still at the same number of FTE now as it was 20 years ago, despite the population of the City of Hood River increasing by roughly a third. So 2-part question here. One, which I can guess what the answer is to this one. Do you feel like your department is fully staffed? And 2, what would it look like in terms of what you would feel like is a fully staffed department in terms of number of FTE? Because I thought that was, and it's not the only department that is like that, but I thought it was interesting to see that despite obviously with the levels of service, both in terms of our own residents, but also visitors, like clearly there's, going to be more of a need for services, obviously, but the staffing level is the same as it was 20 years ago. So yeah, if you could provide some insight on that.
Well, I think most department heads will tell you, we never feel like all our positions, especially emergency service, that are full. It seems like you think you're gonna get a full staff, or say this 15 I have, then when someone leaves or 2 people leave or such. So do I feel like today, like we're fully staffed? I haven't felt like that for several years, and I think patrol guys will tell you the same way. That we just haven't got there yet. If you look at other comparable stuff like Lincoln City or Seaside, if you really want a comparable like our community tourism, cost of living, even as far as housing in those areas, substantially larger departments. I think someone said like today close to 28 or something just in Lincoln City, not counting Seaside and stuff. That's substantial. They are actually staffing for tourism. I understood that years ago for us because we definitely were influx due to summer activity, but we're seeing that year round now. It's not like it used to be. As you've been, you work on the mountain, you totally understand that we're definitely heightening the mountain as much as we are as the the bike trails and the rivers. So we're definitely seeing that. I personally believe kind of I love extra duties that we could do within our communities, our Columbia Board. Like the Mid-Columbia Narcotics Task Team that they're opening up, the Sheriff's Office, the Wasco County, the Dallas PD. We can't participate in those as far as the dedicated individual, because we're just trying to build shifts to cover 24/7 coverage. I would love to get there. I think that's an important asset for local law enforcement to have, that they can actually work on dedicated things and partner with our local agencies. It's gonna take at least 18 full-time certified police officers. Now, that's 18, that includes me. So if that would be patrolmen, we need 12. And 12 actually will alleviate the stress and the mental shifts of having to shift as far as schedules left or right to cover shifts without substantial amount of overtime, or those, we're at a point now where the department, I can throw out a 10-hour shift and be like, yeah, I'd rather be home than go to a shift, just because they're right now, they're kind of burned out, but we're hoping with these 3 new guys coming in, there's a new spark, filling shifts and such, so we need at least 2 more, the city does, to really make a stable shift as far as 24 hours, 24/7. If we wanted to look like the sheriff's office did for a few years and not provide 24/7 coverage, it's an option. I mentioned that to Abigail, I don't know, about 6 months ago, kind of where we came on the idea, like, we need to find like an overhire position so we can backfill some of these, so we're not getting hit, sideways once a shift opens up because someone's chosen to leave. So 18 total, 12 is just patrol, would make a pretty stable schedule. Still wouldn't give you 100%, all in for special assignments like a drug person. If you look at like the sheriff's office, they have 3 detectives. They have actually 2 detectives and a supervisor. You look at the Dallas PD, yeah, they're a little bit bigger, but I think they have 5 detectives. We have 1. So the nice thing about it, like when we had the murder, the manslaughter case 3 or 4 weeks ago, we do have an interagency agreement, we call it the major crimes team, where whether it's the Dallas, whatever sheriff's office, us, you pick up the phone and say, call out, we need everybody, and everybody from the Dallas PD to state police, and everybody participates and helps in these. So all of us in the Columbia Gorge do not have enough staffing on certain scenes, especially something like that, to do all the follow-up. So collaboration within the Gorge is incredible. Especially in our side, we do have an intergovernmental agreement in Washington and go both ways if we need to. So that's what saves our bacon, I guess you would say.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Good, right? Thank you. Did you want to say something? No.
I will note that this is National Police Week, so if you see officers, please thank them and their families for the dedication to our community. Thank you, Neil.
You're very welcome. Very good.
Next week is National EMS Week. One right after the other, which they have to share with National Public Works Week. You need
Since Neil set me up. Like, gee, yeah.
I'm the guy that wears Velcro, so.
You got it?
No.
What?
Click on that and share. This was over here.
No.
Here's the setup.
There you go.
Menu.
You.
Yeah. Is that,
One button. All right, page 34. 34, 35. For those who don't know me, my name is Leonard Damien, I'm your fire chief. So I've been here almost 9 years. I don't have as many budget presentations as Neil, but I do have equal amount of slides as he does, but no statistics. So tonight, we'll go over some services and outcomes, services we provide, the outcomes we've had this last year. Some of it's budget related to budget items that's related to stuff that we've talked about the last several years. And then also we're going to go over some future challenges similar to what Neil just discussed a second ago. So what do? We provide fire and EMS coverage 24/7, 365 days a year. Unique to this fire department, for those that haven't heard this speech before, we don't just service the 3 square miles of the city, we serve about 145 square miles, including the city. So the city's a little blue, little squiggly part along the river. Everything in the yellow that you see there, that's West Side Fire District, East Fire District, and then where the screen is, there's a little sliver that goes north and south, and that's Mosier Fire District, and that's in Wasco County. So we serve in 2 counties. And like I said, 145 square miles. So how do we serve that? We have 16 firefighters, all but 1 are paramedics. The one that's not is an intermediate, which is the next step down. We do it with a minimum staffing of 4 a day. And one of those people, the 16 person thanks to a grant, which I'll go over in a little bit, works a 40-hour schedule. So currently he works Wednesday through Saturday, 10-hour days. So our call volume since 17-18 to this last fiscal year is up 27%. So this is like a theme you guys have heard probably from other people. As this place gets bigger, it gets more popular. As that gets more popular, we get more busy. Interfacility transfers. So this is probably our biggest pinch point, which I'll cover here a little bit later. Since 17-18, this is when I started taking statistics that we've been doing, we're up 70, almost 72%. So you say, what's the interfacility transfer? That's us taking people from the local hospital here to Portland. So we go to Portland a lot. So we're on the freeway quite a bit. So we average just over 1 a day. And you can see last year, July in the blue, we were pushing close to 2 a day. It was crazy. So outcomes. So this little document is the cover that's going to county next Monday for board approval. So this is your updated ambulance service plan, which used to be called the ambulance service area plan, ASA plan. So this is how the county governs our ambulance business. How it's looked at, what we do, our measurement. It was a cover to cover rewrite. So it was initially written in 2006, 2014. They just changed the signature page. Oregon Health Authority didn't like that. And so we've had to rewrite it. So myself and a few other people cover to cover rewrite. This is a 6-month project. Monday, hopefully it's going to be almost over. So if you want to hear more about it, tune into the Board of Commissioners meeting on Monday. But the key things that are coming out of it, in the 9 years I've been here, we haven't had an ambulance committee. It's written, never been followed. So that's started 6 months ago. GIS, which everyone kind of knows what that is. More importantly, we're using it for response times, areas of jurisdiction. So where Parkdale drives down into Odell, where we don't drive into Odell. Right now it's broken down by jurisdictional lines, which isn't the fastest for the customer. So we're about to change that all up. There'll actually be an ambulance franchise application. So the city has, or sorry, the county has no insurance records, nothing about any of us that are providing services to the county. And it did, it was way before 2006. And then lastly, QA. So this is our medical quality improvement, quality assurance. So we're going to look at our call types, how we service customers, where we can make improvements, leverage our physician supervisor, medicines we give, etc. Big lift. All right, Medicare audit. You might have seen this in the 22-23 budget request. It just finished. This has been a big monkey on my back for quite a long time. It looked at everything with granular detail, from how we follow Medicare rules, claims billing, how we do delivery and care, all the vehicles we have, how old they are, how well they're maintained, what we carry on them, our staffing models, when we're low in staffing, etc., and our response times. The response times, because of our CAT system, was the most manual process. So in route, I'll just say 6 data points, the call type, all that's manually entered into a spreadsheet. Couldn't just provide dates, dump it. Nightmare. So that'll be changed with the new county CAT system, but looking backwards, that's why it took this long.
Chief, why did we have to do a Medicare audit? Were we in trouble?
No, we had our NPI, which is our Medicare number, randomly pulled. Yes.
And how much did this cost? The audit.
$35,000, which I'm sure they did $35,000 worth of work. I felt like I did $70,000 worth of it. It seemed it was a lot more than I anticipated. All right, so 2 years ago, I went out for a grant. This is where we got our 16th FTE. So this is the last year of that matching grant. So this is what created our 40-hour position. Why a 40-hour position? Most of our calls are during the day. But we can't do a 7-day 40-hour position. So we have some days that aren't covered. So we just switched the schedule. Part of it to capture, we're spending overtime for him to help us with transfers, and he's not getting back. So we're gonna see how this looks, just doing 410s versus 5/8s. That's another grant that we just applied for and received is a wildland staffing grant. So 2022, 2023, we didn't get it last year for whatever reason, and we got it this year. We're gonna up staff during the summer, during the red flag days, and where we have, I'll just say, a lot harder weather. So we have an incident outside when it's super hot. It makes crews super tired quick, so we'll staff extra during those days. And hopefully have a part-time position. So that just happened not too long ago. Any questions so far on that? Am I going too quick? Perfect.
Can I butt in? I'm sorry.
No.
I think that is a grant that we are a second tier. There are, I spoke a bit about how sometimes we aren't eligible for things because of our high median household income. This, I think, is one where we only are eligible for the grant after they have looked at other communities that have a lower, I don't know if it's median income, but it's a statistic like that. So last year, the funds were all given out before we were eligible to receive any. This year, we were lucky enough that there were funds left for us. But this is an example of where we're not guaranteed or we're not competitive for some of the grants that we could otherwise receive.
Yeah, so it was a grant based on the median income and also the size of our budget, not city budget, fire department. All right, so 2022 came to council to request to purchase a fire engine. We'll go over the apparatus replacement here in a little bit as well. This was part of it. And you say, why 2022? I was doing an audit of the costs of all our vehicles, and we found out we could order it way ahead. Why way ahead? We were locking in steel prices in $2022, and it saved the city roughly $120,000 by doing that. So we locked in a price early, and that price was honored 3 years later when we received it. So we just got the vehicle in March, and it replaced an engine that we had since 1998. So that's how long these vehicles last. We also got a new command vehicle. Saw that before, it's a car parked on the road. Interesting. So we had a new command vehicle, otherwise known as C2. So this is where our captains or company officers kind of act as a third person on an ambulance as a quick response vehicle. They're the ones that run our incidents and run a fire, say, from this vehicle. So it's kind of like a battalion chief vehicle, chase vehicle for an ambulance, that sort of thing. So in case we need an extra set of hands. So that also was purchased early, and then again, it was replacing a vehicle from 2011. All right, so safety and performance, something that the police chief talked about was succession planning. So I'll go over a couple of those. We have someone retiring here at the end of this month, Jason Wilkins, after 23 years with the city. Sam Butler, this person replaced after our budget meeting. He's the one that replaced Captain Arista. If that name rings a bell to you, he's almost off probation. And then we hired Miranda. She's actually replacing Jason. So kind of like what the police chief was talking about, a crossover gap. We don't send our people to DPSSD to go for training. It takes a year. We expect them to come in the door with lots of stuff. It just takes them a while to get trained. So this little crossover provides training opportunities, but also maintain coverage and staffing. So she just started at the beginning of the month. I should say 5/1/61, my apologies. All right, budget. So what's coming out next year? This is probably our biggest thing, because what's on the paper on page 34 onward, not much changes other than some removal for this subscription stuff that's been talked about at council. And I want to say it was also talked about in the previous budget, if I'm not mistaken. So this upcoming fiscal year, we just started looking at ambulances. So to Councilor Rivera's question about energy efficiency, so we're looking at going away from diesel, but maybe going back to diesel. So our last ambulance was gasoline powered in hopes that we had better miles per gallon because we're going up and down the freeway quite a bit. And around that 145 square miles I just talked about. Because our fuel budget is going up and up because we just keep going more and more. So gasoline comes with its own problems, diesel has its own problems. So we're looking at Clickett County, Community County, we're gonna go to Woodburn to look at a Sprinter van. I might be see one or two other places to look at other options that we might be able to use. Something that's a little bit different price point, something that's a little bit more economical with an engine that provides us the needs with the hills and the distances we go. So that's coming up. And then I should add that we used to have ambulances on a 9-year cycle. We've been stretching it to a 10, just to try to squeeze what we can out of the vehicle. All right, future challenges. This is will be more budget related, but I guess it's something that you guys will hear coming up. So the next 30 months, we have 3 captains total. I got 2 of them retiring, and we'll be gone in 30 months. I have 1 lieutenant who's on a work back, which means he'll be gone in about 18 months. I have 1 engineer that leaves at the end of this month. So what does that mean? That's 50% of my company officers are first line management, and 25% of my workforce. And in the time I've been here, of the 16 people, I've hired 10. So we're young, and we're about to get younger. So a lot of experience. Service demands. I already talked about interfacility transfers. We're going to the hospital quite a bit. Honestly, what this means is we're gone about 5 hours every day. So 2 firefighters are gone. It could be a firefighter with an intern. So I know Councilor Rivera talked about high school, but these are college age kids that are driving. But still, we have 2 people gone 5 hours of the day. And this is only going to get worse. So we're looking at alternatives. We've used lifeline quite a bit. So you've seen that above in the sky. Almost every critical patient where the skies are blue and they could fly, they go that way. So it's because we can't keep sending people away, but also a critical patient takes more than 1 person in the back of the patient. That means 3 people gone, which leaves 1 in me, or maybe 2. Trust me, you don't want me, right, Gary?
No comment.
Oh, come on. So most of those days we have 20% reduced staffing, and then transfers. Well, we talked about the day position. Most of those happen during the day, but that's first 12 hours. About 82% of our transfers are during the day. We say no to some of those at night that are less critical because we don't have the help outside in the county, so we need to leave our staff back, and we don't want to dump the entire city and those 145 square miles leaving nobody here. So that's why the word no gets said a lot. All right. What? You guys have any questions at all? Sure.
Question. You painted a challenging picture in terms of succession planning and turnover out in the near future. Chief Holstein, solving some of that. Well, he's got a different issue, which is lead time to effective employees. You seemingly have a shorter lead time to effective employees than he does, but I guess, I don't see how in your budget or your FTE projections, you're necessarily addressing this coming turnover. Are you gonna address it in the next budget cycle, or how are you gonna, what's your overhire plan or something similar to deal with that?
Well, ideally, these are phased in and not everybody at once.
Yeah.
So that's 1. 2, since I've been here, we've been focusing on leadership training, managing large scale incidents, getting them hazmat IC certified, so that's hazmat incident command to be able to, there's a training derailment. There's a lot of things that come with that. So I'll say broaden their scope and skill and opportunities. We send in people down to Gresham Fire for AO training, so that's how to drive a fire engine, pump a fire engine, so we're not just homeschooling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to broaden those opportunities and not just look inward, we are outward. So we do a lot of training in the Dalles, a lot of training with Mid-Columbia Fire at their training tower. So most of the training has to come with reps, but also time in the job. I can't replace when people leave, when we hire. we will be a young workforce in the next 30 months, very young. So the stuff that Neil, the police chief, is having difficulty with, we have the same. Ours are more, I'll say, skill-based.
Okay.
And time-based. I can't get either one of those until they're here. So, but the ones that are here, getting those that have shown interest in being leaders, all of them have opportunity. One's finishing his bachelor's degree in fire science, so those are things that open those opportunities for the other staff members. So all of them have those opportunities. I'm fostering that in all of them. Some are interested, some aren't. So that's the good news of the story.
So you'll be looking to promote some of your lower mid-level folks into these bigger leadership positions and then backfill the lower level folks with new folks. And you think you've got enough time to do all that?
30 months is a big lift for a lot of those.
Yeah.
It'll come with time, right? But it also comes with hiring. So it starts with hiring really good people that have a really good heart to be able to teach Diane and son how to do stuff.
Yeah, I'll add something to Leonard. He did, as part of his budget process, ask for an additional FTE in the fire department. There is the additional reality that there is a CBA negotiation coming up this year. And so from a budget standpoint, we pushed back on that FTE a little bit because we didn't really know what it was going to cost. Right, and so without sort of certainty as to what the sort of the cost structure looks like, or the sort of the wage structure looks like, it was difficult for us to just sort of approve an FTE. But I think that discussion, sort of will occur in the short term after we have an idea as to sort of what the new wage structure looks like.
Thanks for the context.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing, and it wasn't in the slide, only part because it's an existing expenditures, but we've started a wellness program. Part of this is a reflection. We've had some back injuries, some long-term illnesses and injuries, all related to those on-the-job injuries. And so I'm trying to prevent those by implementing that. And it's going to take some time. There's more to it that comes with labor agreements, right? So again, suppose a work change to local without having an agreement. So we're in the middle of all those talks with policy and people, but some of it, I'll say, we've had a soft start, and so far it's been well received, and we're working through that right now. That's to keep the workforce healthy and reduce it over time.
We have a question from Gladys up there.
Yeah,
Councilor Gladys.
both, yeah, Councilor Rivera. Yep.
Thank you so much for all that you and your team do. I do have a question about the GEMT reimbursement. I see one line item that talks about, actual for 22, 23, and it goes through each year. And then right below it, it says GEMT CCO reimbursement coordinated care. And I don't see any funding for the last couple of years. Help me understand, because I highly doubt that you're not being reimbursed for Medicaid members that are using the ambulance.
We actually are. So I think you can fill in. So we used to have, when I first started, when I got here, I'll say 2017, 2018, GEMT first came to Oregon, and that's ground emergency medical transport. So I'll just make up some numbers. We charge $2,500 to a patient that we provide service to. They're a Medicare patient. They only pay $550. So the rest of that money we have to write off. This can't continue for a long time. If you look at our billables and what we receive in ambulance revenue, because it's not a one-for-one relationship, that money has to be looked at from a different point of view. So the GEMT process, when it came to Oregon, they came with a whole, I'll call it a fancy formula, where it goes in. It looks at a whole lot of metrics for the fire department, what we build, a payer mix, so who has Medicaid, Oregon Health Plan, and who has private pay or Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then we get a percentage of that money back in reimbursement. So that's reimbursement for our time, materials, and wear and tear on a vehicle. So that was a fee for service. 2 years later, CCO came into being. So that's how the GEMT, those two line items listed, that's why they have CCO and a fee for service line. All it did was the CCO money robbed from the fee for service money. It's the same Medicare patient. Now the patient was being followed by a CCO. It's reimbursed by a CCO. Complicated. I'll just say there was a time that they wanted to track those two lines. To me, it's still GEMT money. So we combined it. So that's why you see just one line for that. So, but to the variability, it's because we don't control who calls 911. We don't control what kind of insurance people carry. To be bluntly honest, that's not a factor for any of our care. It's just on the back end business side as it does. And so that's my job with other people to help, I'll say, squeeze what juice we can out of that limit. So it's not a lot, but it's better than zero. So that money used to be zero before I got here and before the state adopted it. But it is a lot of work. Chris will tell you how much work it is. And this, you had something else. Chris,
My answer is gonna be much more simple. I was gonna say we combine.
Okay, I feel like I have a follow-up question for that. So do you feel like you are being appropriately reimbursed for Medicare, Medicaid, even like Healthier Oregon patients, for example, that are a part of the CCO?
I would like to give an easy Chris answer. I would say the simple answer is no. But I'll also say the system's so complicated, it doesn't feel like you can say this is an easy thing to figure out. Anyone in the finance department here, because we've had a turnover here, right, with the finance department, it's been a giant learning curve. And frankly, I've been here the longest and I don't really understand it completely. I just follow the instructions they give us. Now, those instructions have been complicated from the state level, so the Oregon Health Authority, and because of complaints from all the Oregon fire chiefs, it's being rewritten, hopefully combining those two, fee for service and CCO, into just one simple program that we don't have to keep you applying, get new signatures, establish a new contract, provide all this other data. It's a lot. We keep chasing our tail. So, but it's worth it. I mean, it's worth it.
You know, yes, I can imagine so, especially understanding that Medicaid has some of the highest reimbursement than commercial payers. So I would love to maybe do a deep dive with you at some other point. I do have another question around, you had mentioned that whenever you have transfers to some of the larger hospitals out in the Portland area, has there ever been conversation to potentially subcontract with some of those, especially during those limited hours for staffing here locally, where you can have, for example, I don't know, a hospital from the Portland area that's sending an ambulance to pick a patient up as opposed to you sending staff out?
We do that after hours, but I will be blunt and say if it's a critical patient, we don't say no, right? Because that's our job.
Yes. Yeah, maybe some of those less criticals that you were talking about. Sounds like that does take place.
It can, if it's something that they want to do, then they have the means to go through a transfer system through the Portland area.
Okay.
To grab the next person that's either coming out this direction, if there is one, or they just call for one. So it doesn't leave the hospital hanging, I guess I'll say it. But if someone has an infected toe, as an example, at 2 a.m., we're saying no, they could wait till 8 a.m. But we also say no when 84 is closed and or the weather is bad or it's red flag day. And we really need to keep our staff in the community.
Right.
And that's half of it away. So although we have a great relationship with the hospital, it's been bumpy, but the last several years it's been great.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Councilor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chief. I apologize if I missed the particular explanation of this, but on page 36 of our budget manual here, the first line item under revenue mentions fire marshal fees, and those that revenues increased to 275%. So I was just curious as to what first, what that entails, that line item, and second, why the significant increase.
Sure. So if you didn't know, I also act as the city's fire marshal. Am I really a fire marshal? No. Do I have some training with it for what I have to do? Yes. We contract with the state fire marshal's office that provides a deputy fire marshal from the state fire marshal's office for Hood River County. So I'll just put that on the table. Regarding the dollars, that's all through planning and building. So if we have a large complex going in, that's why you'll see those fees. If there's no building in this community, then we'll see those fees be smaller. So it's a direct result of, I don't know if it's a percentage. I'll let Dustin explain that probably more. I don't know. That's something I don't handle, don't touch, but it gets charged or credited to my department.
Gotcha. Thanks for that explanation. And the second question, And I'll ask the same one that I asked Chief Holste, again, looking at that FTE page over 20 years, the number of FTEs that the fire department has is basically the exact same number as it was 20 years ago. And we know that between just the increase in both resident population, tourist population, more people doing outdoor sports and coming here for recreation, and also having I believe having an aging population, obviously demand for services there, not even talking about increase in fire danger. Again, do you feel like which I can guess with the at least the one FTE request that you had, putting aside obviously the upcoming staffing challenges that you have, do you feel that your department is adequately staffed? And if not, what are you looking for?
I think you answered your question. I think what I provided to the city was we would like another person to work the opposite hours where the 40-hour person can't work. So we have 7-day-a-week coverage for that. I will say we have students, we have interns, though they're not a full replacement for any of our staff members. We do provide a big help, and we provide a big help to the community by teaching these younger people this job, right? Because they might be replacing us someday. But also, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that Westside Fire is added staff. Cascade Locks is added staff. There's parts of this county that we've been pushing on to also add staff because they're having the same challenges. They're just mostly volunteer. So it's a transition from a volunteer organization to more of a career organization. The city of Hood River isn't the solution for the entire county. So a lot of our calls, I don't have it broken down by city versus 145 square miles I was talking about, or 142 city. I don't have that because our CAD system, like I mentioned about hand counting everything, is poor to provide that data set. So it's being replaced. Hopefully here at the end of the year, I'll be able to tell you with better acuity what goes on next budget cycle. But luckily, I think an extra person would be helpful, sure, for us, not because we have injuries and long-term illnesses that keep people away from work and puts additional strain on staff, just like the police department has with their people either being gone or hurt. But we've done all these other things too. So I don't think the simple answer is always adding people. I will tell you that we've looked at more of a different approach because we were told we had to look at other options, right? So we weren't in a position to say yes to that. But what Chris had said, we do have an upcoming contract negotiations that may have some impact on what we can and can't do, right? I'll still say this, I will advocate for our staff. They're doing a lot of work. We do a lot of stuff in Mosier where we shouldn't have to because they don't have staff. They have a police or a fire chief. So, but we have the ambulance here. We can't do everything with 2 people. So it takes away from the city, but we try to backfill because Cascade Locks comes to cover us. We have to look at that county that covers us. So we try not to do everything as silo. So we are a regional fire department provider. We provide it in the region, but the answer isn't within the city per se. All the other partners have to step up too. And I know that seems like a political answer. The truth is, I would love 1 more person. The union and I would probably still agree that we would like 3 more people, right? But where does that number stop? I think 1 would get us to where we need to be over the next 5-6 years.
Great. Thank you for providing that info.
Do you see hiring more? I know you hired an EMT recently. Do you see that fulfilling staffing more now that there's more of a shortage of paramedics, or is it cost based? Or
the person I mentioned on the staffing grant, he's at EMT intermediate, so we're able to run an ambulance at, I'll call it full freight. We're not reduced pricing. He does everything that a paramedic can do minus a couple skills, as you're aware probably. I would like to think we could hire EMTs that are firefighters, but bluntly, that causes us a problem internally with how we rotate workload. Most of our workload is medical, and it's hard to send just 1 paramedic out into the county. We don't have anyone else to rely on for skills, all those things. It makes it more difficult for us to do stuff. A real high acuity call, We did work with 2 paramedics, so having worked with Gary a long time ago. You have 6 sometimes on a call. We have 2. So 2's not a lot. It sounds like a lot, but 2's not a lot if someone's life's on the line and you have 15 things to deal with. You only have 40. So 6 is a lot, but that's what I was used to. You know, so I've admired the staff that run things by themselves often in rural areas with volunteers that know what to do often or limited information. So, but to answer your question, specific.
One more question for you. With firemen, looking at it, like, it looks like it's pretty well stabilized as far as income. Do we get a large percentage of the subscription cost, or is it just like a small percentage that comes to the city? Do we feel like, I don't know, is there more potential to push that?
We push it, so we get a report every month, when we get a check every month.
Yeah.
We get a check every month when people redo it, when their subscription renews. We talk about it when we're on call, we talk about it when people rarely call about a bill. Our third-party biller talks about it all the time, because we ask them to do that. But in public settings, other settings, we'll talk about it. We also talk about Lifeline and why, because we use it a lot for transfers, so it's just an insurance policy that's relatively cheap. But Lifeline manages our fireman program for the county. I want to say it's a 30% administrative fee, but they print all the color flyers, manage all the money. To me, it's worth every penny because we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it goes up and down, and it's pretty steady. I mean, people are going to pay for what they're going to pay already. It's Amazon subscription, fireman. Choices.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Just on a side notion, I'm sure you explained this when I came to see you and learn about the department, but can you remind me about you said you have 1 40-hour-a-week person, how that differs from all the other people on staff?
Sure. So our shift schedules are a 48-hour shift followed by 96 hours off, or you can think of it as 2 full days off 4 days. We have an A shift, a B shift, and a C shift, almost like most fire departments. So they just work a 2 on 4 off. So they work that schedule, and then probably what everybody here is used to. I work Monday through Friday, Tuesday through Saturday, Wednesday through Saturday in this case for this gentleman. So he works Wednesday through Saturday for 10 hours, starts at the same time, but goes home a little early and works with everybody.
Okay.
So it's extra set of hands.
During the busier times.
Yep. And
Instead of having another third person or whatever person like on the other cycle.
correct.
Okay. Sorry, thank you.
Part of that is because we could not afford another person for each shift. So it was, how can we benefit all of the shifts and focus on the busiest, particularly with facility transfer times. I'm sure every crew would appreciate another person on their shift.
Is there a large administrative or are you implementing any technology?
I do have a half-time FTE administrative assistant, so she helps with a lot, but she also works half-time for Public Works, managing another one of their programs. But she's housed at the fire station, so she does everything in that regards, but honestly, a lot of that comes to me. So if it's interfacing with the state level, county level, like I mentioned about those reports, Medicare audit, there is not a single staff member, one, I would want doing that, because I want them helping the public. But 2, I just see that as that's my, thing to do, right? So I don't have the number 2 person that I would love to get this all to, but that's okay. I would rather have people helping the public than focusing on administrative paperwork. I'm very good on that, Barry.
And is there any technology that you're wanting that would help with that?
The county's upgrading their CAD, so their 911 computer aided dispatch program. It's got rather old, very archaic CAMP reports. It's going to be 2025 model versus probably a 1988 model. I honestly don't know how old it is, but it's on its last legs. So hopefully that'll answer a lot of our questions. The biggest one is our response times, like how fast we get out the door, all that. We've already paid for a connection to the CAD system to our reporting system. It broke several years ago, or I'll say a year and a half ago, when the county's Power, where it was sitting, the CAD system couldn't be upgraded because it was too old. So we've been sitting for 18 months having now to manually enter all our stuff again. So Crew's got a taste of it, and then it went away, and so they're chomping at the bit for this connection to come out. So, but technology, we have a bunch of stuff. I apologize, I didn't share from something that would go to CBR for us to fancy art monitors and everything gets connected to the cloud, and we can pull it into our reporting software. So what was manual many years ago, scanning paperwork, is now a lot of it's automated. So for me, not so much, but for some.
I don't know if this is a question or just a comment, but I'm just here to be here, you know, I think as we think towards, you know, bond strategies and whatnot, you know. Which is one of our goals, you know, one of our goals as well as, you know, employee experience here at the city, employee retention, et cetera. I know there was a big public safety bond, we did, et cetera. And I just think we might keep that in mind in the aggregate and maybe report out to council about just the overall staffing requirements of the city and what that looks like across departments.
Thank you.
And thank you, Chief.
Thank you guys for your time, and thank you for all your.
Offer up a break.
Oh, yeah. Take like 5 minute break, so. Come back.
Second.
Plan. Paul gets us 4 minute breaks sometimes. Percent more efficient. One of those areas. Alderman Gary Smith.
Very.
Gary Smith. Huh? Gary Smith.
Can I ask a quick Chris question while we wait for Gary before you start? Is that possible?
Yeah, sure, thank you.
If it's a short answer, I welcome it. It's evident in the first two presentations that the PERS accrual rate, or I guess payment rates, are growing like substantially faster than departmental salaries.
Yeah.
Which is, can you just talk to that a little bit without going to deep dive on PERS? And is this like a year catch up, or, you know, my worry is, you know, our PERS rates are going up 20%, our departmental salaries are going up 5%. Wait a minute, you know?
Yeah, the short answer. PERS sets rates every 2 years.
Okay.
They give guidance rate so on the non-rate set year, right? So you get a guidance rate every other year. The guidance rates that came out this year were significantly higher than they have.
Right, yes.
So there's two things that come into the two things come into play. One is it's all based on actuarial tables. And the actuarial tables make a assumption as far as what the invested funds return. I think they assume like a little over 6%. The last 2 years of investment, the PERS actually, one PERS fund actually lost money. The other PERS fund, I think, had like a 4% increase, right? So part of it was that the invested funds did not match the actuarial returns, and so that impacted rates. The city has a the city has a side account, which is a fund. I think it's about $1.6 million that they funded, and the returns on that investment are help the cities buy down their rate. Same impact, right? Those did not return the same, right? And so the buy down from the side account did not impact rates as much as they should have as well, right? So the end result is PERS rates are actually up 13%. And then our salary increases are about 64%, right? And so the overall combined impact, because PERS rates are, it's a multiplier to your salaries, right? So the overall effect is, you know, sort of a 13% increase in PERS rates combined with a 6.4% increase in salary rates is about a 20% increase. Excuse me, in PERS. You know, it is unclear, right? Like PERS had a problem, you know, just as far as sort of keeping up with retirements. You know, this is probably not something that why it should not be this extreme every year, right? This is something that probably will outpace inflation.
Yeah.
And a previous iteration of this committee and a previous iteration of city council, which I was on, set up that side account, and good job us. There was like matching funds from the state. We put in some. So we did a good job buffering 2025 when we did that in 2016.
Great, thank you so much.
Go ahead, Dustin. Planning
Bill, without further ado, I know you guys just went through 60% of your general fund and plus budget. Please note, each of these agencies represent about 4%. So my presentation will match with that extent. We will have no pictures, there will be no glamour, there is no hero.
There's no hero.
This is just planning. For you all watching at home, I believe it's my mom. My name is Dustin Nilsson. I'm the director of planning and zoning, and I oversee the building department, which is a separate fund outside of the general fund. Planning department role here within the city is essentially to administer the city's comprehensive plan. We do that primarily through the administration of the zoning code. It's your land use development regulations. The city within this great state of Oregon implements the Oregon statewide planning program, which is a one-of-a-kind program established 50 years ago by Senate Bill 100. it really establishes the framework that the state manages its growth and land use patterns, its economic development, its states, its farms, its forest use, its cultural resources, the coastline. It is all administered here on the local level. So often we find ourselves beholden to the state's mandates. However, it is the state's planning program. And it is really one of a kind, and anywhere in the world we do it our own way. It's been so successful that we have not seen anyone copy it, but it is the reason why your environment looks the way it does. Your urban growth boundaries have been set to limit the expansion of sprawl. That's why we have compact urban areas. It's why we have hypercritical and hyper-focused farm and forest protections, and often as a result, it's sometimes why we feel the squeeze of housing. So, but we are here, and it's a great place to live. I wouldn't change it for the world. However, sometimes we deal with the issues and the legacies of these decisions, and constantly, this is the venue of tension, trade-offs, and that push and pull. So, not only that, this department leads really your transportation system planning efforts, your affordable housing strategy efforts, various approvals, quasi-judicial matters, development regulations and approvals. Your short-term rentals are all administered through the planning department, combined with the building department, who is responsible for the construction, permitting, structural, life safety, accessibility, and mechanical reviews for all your physical construction here within the city. We have 6 full-time equivalents, which has been pretty constant for some time. In the middle of, you're still on the same slide, 4%. We get 1 slide. That's 2 staff planners, myself, a development administrator, and 2 administrative staff, which are cross-trained to really balance between short-term rentals, building permitting, as well as the planning department roles and functions. If we move on, take a quick look into last year's really work plan and our organization's plan. Maybe. This works so much better when I didn't have to go to PDF. Lost all my animation. Looking backwards for our work plan, operationally outside the city's work plan, the building department had its second fiscal year under planning department. Prior to that, it was in public works and under administration. But after some long-term absences by way of public works and a couple changeovers of city manager, it ended up under planning, where I took on some of the responsibilities. You'll see part of my salaries in that area. It was really the first time in kind of a natural home for it to really adopt the building department, which predominantly was handled as a third-party private sector organization, or was organized by contract between 2010 and 2019. As 2019 came, city council and the city moved to bring that department in-house, to be funded in-house, and to really provide what it saw as a better customer service experience by having local access to locally employed and staff that was essentially embedded in this organization. The goals last year for building were really to stabilize some of our contract expenditures. All our plan reviews and all our inspections are third-party inspections, predominantly through Hood River County. We needed to refill our building official vacancy. That was almost a year and a half, and really 2 years limited. Really vacancy in a key authority position, and which was done. I stated last year we needed to stop having more additional vacancies, which at this point we've sustained our staff, and we really needed to review some of our revenue and fee forecasts. Seeing that last year we had a general fund subsidy, needed to level that budget. We are going to expect another subsidy this year. You can see this year, earlier city council did review and approve fee update, which took on a full comprehensive building fee update. Some of those fees went up quite a bit. But they are actually matching the fees of Wasco County increases, Hood River County increases. As all three of those organizations are really experiencing some slowdowns in the building and construction world, and really revenues and fees and rates that aren't keeping up with the cost of doing business. So we're not alone in that that increase. Planning saw a little bit of a rebound last year when it came to the number of land use cases. We were at a high point of about 67 per year. We took a dip to about 40. We ramped up about 15%. We issued 150 short-term rental license. That's down intentionally after the amortization period from about 200. We did a fee increase and adjustment to address really the cost of managing some of that compliance. We have third-party compliance software, which pans the internet. And this year we were able to upgrade that system. I can tell you, and we'll be able to increase some of the reporting on that matter. We'll also be able to link this year some of our short-term rental compliances with our transient lodging tax. So we'll have a single system to where we have compliance, license issuance, and to have that seamlessly integrate into the revenues that these folks are supposed to pay. So hopefully improving the customer experience, hopefully improving our the effectiveness to our compliance, and really having a better turnaround on payments. As you can see, TLT is one of your largest revenue sources. We think its management is important. This was a really great slide until I lost all the animation, but this is some of the projects from last year's work plan for planning. On your critical list, planning had 5 of 6 critical projects under its leadership. Getting back to 4 for signing. Rand Road went through its entitlement, its rezone, its approval, and it is now currently under construction. So that one was supposed to go away. Planning was to support the West Side Urban Renewal District formulation. That district was established. It is now underway. It is will see its first year increment. That should go away. FEMA floodplain risk map update. FEMA went away for a little while. The project didn't. FEMA is now back and able to talk with us. They're off their travel ban and gag order. So we will proceed to work with that agency to update our flood risk map updates. That's been an effort that is in combination with the National Flood Insurance program. These maps are being updated for the first time since 1984 with modern technology. However, like any federal regulation, it's seen its bumps in administration, and however, we are required to do this. We do have an option. We don't have to do it, but everyone would lose their flood insurance. So we didn't see that as an option. We see this as a mandate, and also something that we believe should hopefully help address some of the natural hazard issues that we see. The Heights Streetscape plan was in last year's work plan. That has been resolved. We're now into really handed that off to urban renewal for jurisdictional transfers and some of the implementation. The development code audit, we looked at our subdivision and zoning code, really one of the first comprehensive looks at that in a couple of decades. That process is complete, and that will launch us into phase 2, which will come on the next slide. Development review process, we looked at not only the rules and regulations, but how are we handling development? Are there some efficiencies there? What can we do to handle the process better? Part of that was onboarding a building official. We updated a number of forms. Unfortunately, we lost our GIS person, so some of our forward-facing GIS efforts had been lost. We are now this year updating the IGA with the county for services, as well as updating our standard operating procedures, really to improve what we think is a needed improvement in terms of workflow and working together as organizations. Food cart licenses, those were resolved. Building code update or permit update and resolved that in the past. The city was one of the 4 climate pollution space efficient housing grants. We think we have $3 million coming to support space efficient housing. That is through the EPA and DEQ. So that's seen that program come on and off a couple times. I'm holding my breath. However, that would be a great opportunity. I think it's a real honor that we were recognized as having enough
gusto and innovation to really try to push this type of housing, and your housing efforts really have been recognized by the states, and to some extent the feds, in seeing them willing to invest money in your efforts. We went through an annexation discussion with the county. We supported Chris and some of the finance with the system development charge update. And last on here, we have the historic highway West Cliff coordination, and it's going to be an integrated land use model with the state. That will carry over to this year. This year, we've gone from our audit to the phase 2 update. We were a grant recipient for DLCD. So you have some line item within your budget for planning that included some cost sharing with the state. That's actually, we think that's a near an 18-month effort. So that's going to spread a couple fiscal years. We believe FEMA will stay intact for the rest of the year, and we will finish this map update. I mentioned the work through with the IGA. Under projects, we have bike improvement transportation system plan update. That's more of a target approach that we believe will come online in the next second fiscal year. Mobile home preservation strategy. We have a couple mobile homes that really provide parks that have some vulnerability to redevelopment. And then we were granted, we think we're going to end up with $300,000 from ODOT to do work on the historic highway, Cascade Avenue, and an integrated land use plan to look at West Cascade. That will, upon completion, will have the historic highway extended through it from Portland to the Dalles. And that is your only east to west arterial route within the city. It also provides a lot of opportunity for some of your future redevelopment and growth. That corridor has a vast majority of your available commercial space and likely redevelopment of commercial space. It's also the arterial of your newly formed urban renewal district. So excited that the state sees some opportunity there to work through this transportation aspect. And we were the highest scoring TGM grant recipient. And I think, again, another honor, stacking efforts on top of each other to stick with this. So that's the work plan up ahead. Although we're not the lead, you're going to see us involved in additional system development, fee updates. One of your efforts is the new affordable mixed income housing project, REND 2.0. We work with the administration in Abigail on year-round shelter. Your other tasks include infrastructure and enable housing. That's through urban renewal and a future parks and open spaces plan. Trends and outlooks that we see. This is kind of where, you know, it's, I don't want to call it doom and gloom, but some of the challenges that we see in terms of trending. Development slowdowns have certainly, we're starting to take a greater notice in that. We noticed it last year as projects proceeded through the development review process. We have tens of millions of dollars in construction value that have been approved, ready to the point of being issued, that have stalled at the finish line. So the willingness to go through the process, the willingness to get approvals and investment is really not translating to the construction. More construction that is stalled, hotels, retailers, dozens and dozens of dwelling units are ready to be issued. They just, they're not being pulled. They're not being, developers not taking those to construction. That was a trend we saw last year. It is not getting any better this year. And then you can see that really manifest in the budget in some of the subsidies to the building fund. By way of housing, since 2015, we have seen approximately, you know, we do approximately 50 dwelling units per year on average, which has been just the general trend. Our goal is to do 100 in terms of housing needs analysis. We should be doing about 100 dwelling units mixed between single family all the way to apartment and multi-family. That number has dropped to under 15 the last 2 years, excluding Mariposa Village, which was 130, but our market
Our market's ability and willingness to take on new housing dwellings is really starting to get very low, and we're at a pretty low cycle in terms of its willingness to develop that. However, again, recognizing some of the needs and resources and partnerships through the city was one of the urban renewal's premier goals. Start to push housing, start to become a development partner, and help to facilitate that. Trends, number of changes in the state law this year. We're gonna see, again, statewide planning program, changes in timelines that we'll have to meet, changes in regulations, in terms of how can we, what level of discretion we do and do not have to approve developments, especially housing. That's a super sensitive matter and one of the big pushes for the governor. We'll continue to see, and I think what we are concerned, much like police and fire, our ability to sustain, retain, and attract staff, especially at our scale. In 6 people, that is a full staff for us. 4 people makes it like minimum. So my balance and scalability is pretty good. We really try to subsidize and supplement our workforce with that third party. However, at some point you have a minimum number of humans it takes to do this job here. I have 1 staff from building and 1 staff from planning that live in town. So my attractability, everyone else lives outside of town, they commute. It is something that I am always mindful of trying to retain staff. New staff doesn't, it's fine. I'd rather have the same staff for 5 years, have them trained, have them up. So keeping them in place is important. Much like these guys stated, it's a year before you hire someone, before they're on the force. For me, they get to show up day 1, however, they're not ready. It's a very difficult thing to onboard someone when you have small staff. It takes some time to figure this game out, and it takes other staff time. We need mentorship. So it's not a +1, it's at 25% of my time to try to get somebody up to speed. And if I'm not competitive and they leave in year 1 or year 2, it's a real loss and the cycle starts again. So keeping the people that we have, keeping that talent pool intact is super important. And I say that on behalf of all the people that make this thing go from this office. We would be in serious trouble if they weren't there. So with that, we're 4%. That's the projects that are looking ahead. I'm here for your questions. If there's anything that, we take a lot of airtime for this much time. We're 6 of the 16 people in this building. The planning folks, we spend a lot of time in front of the camera. We're public facing, so we take an inordinate amount of airspace often. But we're proud to do this, and this is our home, and we're here for any of your questions that you have. I'm here. They're here in spirit.
I was curious what you said about the mobile home parks. Like, is the threat to be bought out and then we lose the number of people that are available to live there? Is that?
Yeah, a couple of them are, in their current capacity, some of them represent really some of the last option for a vulnerable population. Mm-hmm. And we've seen a couple of those spaces go on market. And when that happens, this is privately held property. There's really little we can do once sold to see that displaced. Mm-hmm. Also, it's something to be really mindful of when we start working with urban renewal and starting to we start to catalyze development and redevelopment. We become a participant in that, and that's part of the goal. However, one of the consequences of that and things that we want to avoid are issues of displacement, that we don't have options for people who may not have options already. We don't want to intentionally do harm to that circumstance. So part of that is coming up with strategies to say, how do we preserve this? How do we create new opportunities and options for people who may not have it? That's while stimulating redevelopment.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for planning, building? Okay. Thank you, Dustin. All right, thank you all. Oh, no, that's it, okay. Thank you all very much for your time. Email me that. If anything comes up, happy to engage and keep the conversation going. Next up with Chris. Everything general fund and more things. That's good. Great. Set your partner up for next, whoever's next, right? Close all the screens, ready, leave the chaos right there.
Actually, I do wanna address, and I'll talk about it a little bit in here. You know, we do recognize the challenges that we have within the city, sort of all departments. With regards to sort of retention, making sure that we are retaining staff, addressing how do we retain staff in an environment where we necessarily, you know, cannot be the most sort of salary competitive in the region. We talked about the challenges with the police, fire, you know, with regards to Dustin, we've worked and it's included in the budget. We try to provide a growth path for a bunch of the planning and building staff. You know, it is a challenge also in a small organization that some people just sort of, there is no career path for certain positions. Hiring the HR manager last year, which was approved by budget committee. You know, part of what Sandy's doing is in staff retention. And so organizing staff events, you know, sort of making sure that there are, that people are not just being heard, but also having fun. And so we spend a lot of time and effort that you don't see in the budget, you know, with regards to sort of trying to retain staff. Turnover is expensive. That said, a lot of the staffs are running very lean. We still do experience a bunch of turnover. You know, that is going to happen. But we do spend a lot of time and effort as far as that. We have great staff at the city. Okay. So we'll go through the other general fund departments. This chart exists in the budget book. This is the setup of all of the funds. So we'll be focusing the remainder of this on what's in the yellow box, which is the general fund. And so a number of the departments have spoken, we'll cover what's left. This is a review from our last conversation. The general fund overview is on page 25 and 26 of your book, but in general, it's about $10.9 million of general fund revenues. That is part of supporting and sustaining each of the departments. So this kind of gives you just a quick overview of general fund inflow and outflow. So non-departmental, we'll discuss that, but that is the primary recipient of a lot of the general fund revenues. So primarily property tax, state revenues, and transit lodging tax. So 8.2 million of the 10.9 in revenue sort of falls into non-departmental. It has minimal expenses. We'll go through what those are. The other contributing sort of, or I guess net positive contributors to the general fund are parking and municipal court. I mean, obviously at significantly lower levels, but both parking and municipal court are contributing to the general fund revenues. That is supporting you know, the vast majority of what is in the general fund. You'll see sort of fire and police, as Dustin referred to, it's closer to 70% of the general fund, with sort of parks, planning, engineering, and city council rounding out the remainder of the general fund services. So you know, as much as we would like to sort of increase every department's manpower and resources, there is a sort of challenge with regards to the finite revenues that we are receiving. And this is just the reality of the general fund. So non-departmental, when we talk about non-departmental, as I mentioned, this is where the vast majority of the revenues are received. This is also where the sort of opening fund balance is. So the city is expecting to begin the 2026 fiscal year with a $5 million anticipated opening fund balance. That is a slight increase, not very nice from sort of what we originally budgeted. In the non-departmental portion of the fund, of the general fund, as I mentioned, property tax, transit room tax, franchise fees. Most of the large source of revenues are running through the non-departmental fund. Interest revenue, obviously, on the opening fund balance, is about $225,000. And so overall, it's about, well, I said it's about 7.9 in general fund revenues, which is a 4% increase year over year. The expenses that are in the non-departmental are things that exist that cannot be allocated to other departments. So it's a lot of donations. So the city warming shelter is an annual donation from the city. There will be a budget addition. There was a resolution passed late in 2024, which is a $6,000 low income downtown bus program. That is for CAT. That will be added to the non-departmental expense. So that expense will increase by $6,000. There's the Hood River Energy Council donation and the West Side Fire annexation payments. So as properties are annexed into the city, there's a responsibility on behalf of the city to make up for some of that lost revenue to the West Side Fire District. Dustin's department in recent years has been successful in passing through that expense to the individuals that are coming in for annexation. So most of these payments are from past years. Non-departmental also has interfund transfers. And so there's a $50,000 safe route for schools. That is a transfer for a program run through the roads fund. I believe Public Works will touch on that next week. As Dustin mentioned, the building fund requires a subsidy this year. And so we are budgeting that subsidy about $300,000. And then there is a $500,000 middle housing incentive program loan. The URA was successful in setting up a middle housing incentive program and receiving $500,000 of funding from the Oregon Investment Board, run through MCED. That required a $500,000 match on behalf of the city. And so that match is being provided by the general fund. I will note that this is a loan. And so this is not an out, this is a sort of this is what we're on as part of that program. As of current, there is nothing outstanding on that program. The success of it is yet to be seen, but we're happy to be able to support the URA and match funding that was received. And then the general fund contingency also exists in non-departmental. It's about 3.7% of all general fund revenue. I will say that the department heads, all of us work to stick to the budgets with regards to expenditures. So the general fund contingency, while it has been used for above expected expenditures, is primarily protection against sort of changes in revenues, right? And so particularly with 20% of the general fund revenue coming from transient lodging tax, which can be very sensitive to sort of local economic conditions. The general fund protects both against above expected expenditures as well as revenues. Because so much goes on in non-departmental, I want to stop here for a second to see if there are any questions.
Is the 5 million opening fund balance the right number? Should it be 7? Should it be 3? Are we happy at 5?
Well, so the financial guidelines for the city provide for a guidance as far as what the minimum is. I believe it's either 3 or 6 months of operating expenses. I think that size is at about $2 million. I'm your finance director. I would like it to be 15. But I think that at 5 we have been very lucky in the last couple of years that we have been able to sort of maintain or increase the opening fund balance. I'm not sure which year of my tenure that's not going to be the case, but then we are experiencing pressures, right? And so at this is what we're talking about as far as sort of maintaining a balanced budget. That's really very, very important, right? So, you know, I mean, so not this year, you know, but soon we'll be talking about, you know, how do we maintain a balanced budget or reserve the output correctly.
Thank you.
Chris, the non-departmental includes a 2.2 million capital reserve allocation. What's the use of that? What's the philosophy on capital reserves?
So this is I will try to make this is a little bit complicated. I will talk about it when we talk about the affordable housing reserve. So the Mariposa Village project has received $2.4 million worth of financing from the SB 1530 sort of bill that is of which Hood River is the recipient. The commitment that Hood River has made to the development project is $2.2 million under any circumstances. The nuance is that the SB 1530 program technically, that's not technically, officially expires at the end of this fiscal year. So in order for it to continue, it needs to be renewed by which organization?
The state legislature.
The state legislature, but through, I think it's through the Business Oregon's budget. It is in the budget, it is part of the budget that the state is going through as far as this process. There is no expectation that it will not be renewed. But the remote possibility exists that it is not renewed. So as part of the budget, in order for the city to have the funds that it has promised to the program, we need to have $2.2 million worth of sort of reserve but unallocated, which is what that is. So you know, I would say that it is a just in case, but we fully expect the program to be renewed. Thank you. Anything else? Good. I'll run through the remainder of the general fund very quickly. You may hear some more about the parks projects when Public Works makes their presentation. Parks is actually it is part of the general fund. It is run by Public Works. There is 2 FTE. It was expanded slightly this year as one Public Works worker has about 95% of their responsibilities now in parks. There's one large contract, surprise, it's landscaping. And so it's about $153,000, which is almost 80% of the overall landscaping contract for the city. There's some tree trimming as far as materials and services, and there's $50,000 in facility maintenance, which is just general safety equipment repairs and upgrades. So that is the vast majority of the materials and services. There are 2 capital projects. They're in the book, CIP number 3 on page 138 and CIP number 4 on page 139. It is the Waterfront Park Beach renovation and the Children's Park basketball court renovation and fencing. The Waterfront Park Beach renovation is $40,000 budget, and the parks, the Children's Parks budget is $45,000. City Council, not much changes here last year in order to reduce the barriers to participation and to attract even more qualified and diverse candidates to seek office. There was the increase of the stipend. So there is a 20% AMI stipend for the mayor. There is a 10% AMI stipend for members of City Council. I do want to make a note that this is only take effect for any council or mayor position after the intervening election. So this does not currently apply to all of City Council. So but this is but this will roll out. Other expenses, so there is a council retreat, there are moderated meetings, there are trainings and meetings. We encourage City Council and the mayor to represent the city at different various conferences, the National League of Cities, League of Oregon Cities. There's equity training. As Councilor Stepina mentioned, we will be looking at a potential bond initiative as a focus project. We have some funds in the City Council for potential facilitators, right, for those discussions. So that's primarily what's the Sarita Sister Program. There is no travel to Sarita. this year. So that will fluctuate with regards to sort of, anniversaries and events. We do have, I think it's about $1,000 as part of a sister gift exchange.
And the 50th is in 2027, so be there.
Engineering. Engineering income, I think you'll note that it's a little bit down year over year. Well, actually, I guess we're flat sort of to the 25 budget. It's just recognition, as Dustin mentioned, we're seeing a slower pace of development on this and review. And so we've adjusted engineering income again, and sort of expecting that would probably be generally flat to this year. There is 0.3 FTE, which is the allocated senior engineer. Yeah, so that's a new hire. And then professional services, they're still contracting with HBH as far as consulting and surveying. That's the vast majority of the operating expenditures. There will be a budget change where we will reallocate some of these professional services to overlap to consulting services, just to sort of support the newly hired engineer. But it will not be an increase in budget, it'll just be a allocation. Municipal court, I think that we have one FTE dedicated to municipal court. There is a contract judge and a contract prosecutor. We don't currently utilize a prosecutor. We do have sort of an on-call prosecutor, should that be required. We've allocated $32,000 for both of those services. I think the big thing of note here, we are experiencing turnover at the municipal court. We currently have we will have a vacancy after Friday, and we are currently looking to hire a court clerk. Municipal court revenues, a slight downward adjustment from fiscal 25. There's just been a slower activity at the court, although we are starting to see a pickup as the police department, starts to bring back staff. And we are seeing some increased court docket sizes. So we're comfortable with our revenue projections there. The parking program. So in this current fiscal year, the hourly parking increased from $1 to $1.25. I think we talked about this a little bit last time. We had anticipated to see both the increase in the parking rate, plus what we'd hoped had been a return to it was historical parking utilization, provided a larger increase than we've seen. So for the current budget, we are forecasting revenue flat for the current fiscal year. Parking exists within the police, the administration, and the public works department. So police for the staff, administration for some of the oversight, but public works for the real sort of maintenance improvements and monitoring of sort of most of the equipment. Police is the enforcement, dedicated parking enforcement officer, and 0.4 FTE for community service. Finance administration, we have a customer service officer or representative, and then of course the mentioned management and maintenance. The largest expense, one of the largest expenses in parking maintenance, and something that we're trying to address is bank and merchant fees. So high transaction fees, very, very low transaction dollar amounts. And the fee percentage is about 14.5%. It's it is difficult. There's a minimum fee, and our average sort of transaction is less than $2. So that is it for the general fund. I want to pause here for any questions.
Mitchell or Rivera have anything?
No. Good. Okay. All right, so I'm looking at the internal service funds. We addressed again, so there are 3 internal service funds. There was administration, which we discussed during the last meeting. Again, administration is the vast majority of the sort of blanket services, right? What we would call overhead in a normal organization. There are two additional internal service funds, fleet and large equipment, and then the reserve for compensated absences. And so in each of the general fund budgets, there are line items which are pass-through expenses for these three internal service funds. So there's the admin fee, which is overhead. There's the fleet and large equipment, which is the assessment for vehicle replacements and that reserve, and then the compensated absences reserve, which is for payouts for retirements, sort of book payouts for turnover. Again, so each of these internal services funds is meant to protect the individual departments and the city from large fluctuations in sort of large, well, one's overhead, but the other two are sort of to protect from fluctuations in large assessments. So while these exist as a line item in the individual sort of funds or departments, they are internal. So we talked about admin, administration, about $2 million in total administrative charges. It's about 4.5% total citywide personnel, M&S capital expense. $1.7 million of that is allocated to individual city departments and funds. And then the remainder, a little over $275,000 is expense to the urban renewal areas. Fleet and large equipment, estimated beginning fund balance is about $3.4 million. Again, this was a little bit higher than we had anticipated over the budget. It reflects, but this does reflect that we would expect to about $1.9 million in this current fiscal year in internal loans to the water fund. And for the fiscal 2026 budget, we're assuming a potential interfund loan of about $750,000, potentially for any facility changes or facility needs. But currently in the budget, that is there for the flexibility to be able to provide those interfund loans. Budget replacements for this fiscal year is about $1,250,000. I'll go through what vehicles we're budgeting. The charges to individual funds is about $864,000 across all contributing funds and departments. This year, there is a special sewer fund assessment of $130,000 to the sewer fund. That is above and beyond what is their allocated replacement charge. I'll discuss that on the next slide.
Can I ask a question about the this is probably like, this is just naive, I just really don't know how it works, but fleet and large equipment fund, I kind of understand what the goal of this is.
Yeah.
The whole set aside mechanic and can you explain how or like what the purpose would be for an interfund loan to a water fund of that kind of magnitude from a fleet and large equipment sort of pool of money?
Yeah, so the fleet and large equipment, obviously it's calculated as replacement for for the whole pool of all the vehicles that are
right.
City house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so the functional issue is that those are not rateable as far as purchases, right? So for example, we just purchased $1 million fire truck.
Yeah.
Right? And most of those vehicles have a life of sort of 8 to 10 years. So just by its very nature, the fleet and equipment fund carries a large balance.
Right.
And so when we make decisions with regards to loans and financing, right, to date, we have done loans from the fleet and equipment fund, right? Because one earns interest to the fund, it's cheaper cost of capital than going outside. And so we use that as sort of a loan base. Now, the downside is that they tend to be very short loans. We've done loans no greater than 5 years in duration. So what we will do this year, because the financing needs are larger, and because it's more appropriate to do longer term debt, we will accept it. But to date, most of the financing that we've done has been through the fleet fund.
Okay, so this is an internal subsidy, so you don't have to go to get outside debt. You're subsidizing some of these shorter term internal capital needs with the overage you've effectively created in this fleet and large equipment fund.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But I guess the downside is that the duration tends to be short.
Yes,
So actually, the loans themselves are not expensive as far as interest rate, but the principal payments are pretty significant, and so the debt service can be.
Right.
The debt service can be larger.
And you're comfortable with the actual balance of, in the fleet and large equipment fund for actual fleet and large equipment repurchasing, and the fact you're not getting too aggressive with those interfund?
Yeah, no, and I think that, another reason that, we're looking outside is we are now starting to see as Neil mentioned, for a long time, we were not able to buy vehicles. Right, and so, these balances were sort of large and unused, right? We're still, and we're still sort of, it's collecting on, sort of other reserves, and so the reserve balance is critical. Thank you. So this is what is in the budget with regards to vehicle purchases for this year. So Leonard mentioned the Medic One. We have about $237,000 budget for that vehicle. I think Leonard mentioned the options. You see the replacements for the police vehicles that Neil had mentioned, and then in Public Works. So Public Works is, much like the other funds or the other departments, has not been able to source and get vehicles. So we're starting to be able to source those vehicles. So a number of these are catch up from past needs. I will note here, and Councilor Rivera, to your earlier question, there are 3 vehicles on the replacement schedule that are being replaced with electric vehicles. Even better than that, there is a large grant that was received through TEQ. Through ODOT, that is facilitating the purchase of those vehicles. So the $10,000 we have for each vehicle here is not because we're getting Teslas, but because there are grant funds that are able to match and purchase these vehicles. So as of current, and we ask often, these grants remain. And because they're grown up, these grants sort of remain available for these electric vehicle purchases. I did mention that the sewer fund has an additional allocation of $130,000. Sewer fund is purchasing a camera truck. This truck is going to be used is very, very needed from Public Works with regards to be able to sort of do sort of exploratory work. It is a new vehicle sort of addition. What we were able to do was reallocate some of the we were able to reallocate some of the funds that had been collected for the EV vehicles that wasn't being used, and then add a special assessment to the sewer fund to purchase this new truck. So that's how we sort of deal with new additions to the fleet. Any questions here? Great. Compensated absences. Again, this is an estimate. As both Neil and Leonard mentioned, we do have some idea as to what we might expect with regards to retirements. Timing is unclear, so we took the best guess estimates on this. We have estimated the total liability about $740,000. That's citywide. For this fiscal year, there's about $147,000 or $147,500 in allocated department charges. That goes again across police, fire, Public Works, and all the non-represented staff. We are targeting a 65% liability funding. So you'll see we will collect $147,500 from the individual departments and charges. This year's estimated payout assumption is $110,000. The remainder of it goes to fund a remaining balance to target 65% overall liability funding. This is a little bit harder than science, But you know, that's sort of the object of this fund.
Do you have to pay that when someone leaves?
Yes, yeah, so there is any you know, sort of outstanding retirement payments, any accrued vacation, you know, things along those lines, that all goes towards compensation purposes.
Yeah, that's just kind of my question, like, can you explain that a little bit, like, why do we owe so much money when somebody leaves a job? I guess like the vacation payout.
Yeah.
Why do we owe more retirement?
So the PERS contributions, honestly, I cannot tell you.
There may or may not be PERS required on vacation payouts depending on what plan the individual person is on. If they're on the newer officer plans, then we do have to pay retirement on that. If they're on the older tier 1, tier 2. I think I have that backwards. Tier 1, tier 2, we require, officer is not required. Right. So it depends on the individual.
Okay, so it's paying retirement on vacation leave or whatever.
Correct, on the payouts.
Is that the only 2 things that we pay when somebody leaves?
Sick leave,
Sick leave.
time, there's some accrued holiday pay for certain departments.
Yeah, it's very individual specific, right? And department specific. Thank you, Carrie. Miscellaneous restricted funds, oops, sorry. Miscellaneous restricted funds, the only one that we've talked about so far is the building fund. So the building fund exists as a restricted fund. The remainder of them are much smaller in nature and very specific. So there's construction excise tax sub funds. There are 3 of them. So the city collects a 1% construction excise tax, which is used to support affordable housing. It is split in sort of different buckets. There is the locally defined affordable housing programs. It's the least restrictive of the funds. This is currently servicing debt service for the 780 Roll Down Marcos Village land that was purchased by the city. There's a CET developer incentive that's about 50% of residential CET collections. It's slightly more restrictive than the previous fund, but it's available for affordable housing incentives. Pretty flexible by definition. And the last one is the Department of Housing and Community Service. This is a straight pass through to the state of Oregon. So a portion of the CPT that's collected goes to this fund, and then it's just is distributed to the Department of Housing and Community Services. The remainder, local improvement district assessment, there is $14,000 outstanding collections. That fund is there. Should that ever be paid? Small grants, there's a small balance in there from old programs. It's a sort of reserve maintenance fund. The fire geo bond that was fully repaid in fiscal 2022. Eventually will roll off the budget book, but that fund had transferred whatever remaining money was in there to the general fund in fiscal 2024. And the toward promotion fund, this is the fund that holds 25% of TLT that's dedicated for tourism promotion. Again, this is a straight pass through to the River Chamber of Commerce. For this fiscal year 2026, we anticipate just shy of $700,000 worth of TLT tourist promotion dollars that would pass through the Chamber of Commerce. The last is the reserve and the fiduciary funds. With the exception of one fund, there's not that much activity. I'm happy to mention that the most activity this year was in the affordable housing reserve. So you'll note in your book, this reserve actually starts off with a fairly significant beginning fund balance of almost $900,000. During this year, Will Norris and his work through both individually in the URA worked to sell some surplus property on Sherman Street. That it had been declared surplus for years, but had not been sold. So Bill's full focus and efforts on that allowed the Affordable Housing Fund to receive almost $500,000 in net sales proceeds. In addition, the agreement for the development of Mariposa Village provided for $500,000 of funds from the River County. And those funds are in the Affordable Housing Reserve. So significant activity during the year. Funds in this are being used for sort of legal for Mariposa Village, as it was required to get that closed and underwritten. And there, you will notice in that fund, there is the assumption of an additional $2.4 million of revenue. That is the SP 1530 funds that I spoke of earlier. And so this fund is being used to process those funds through to the development. So should these funds be received, when these funds are received in the Affordable Housing Reserve, right, it will dollar for dollar reduce that reserve. That's in the and then additionally, we are assuming that there will be a partial pay down of the rent of the Mariposa Village land loan, which has been carried by the city for the purchase of that land. The remaining, sort of parking in lieu reserve. This fund collects in lieu fees from the developers, so developers can pay a in lieu fee as opposed to providing parking. This is primarily downtown. This does have a larger opening fund balance this year because there was a contribution from the Lightwell Hotel, which paid in lieu fees, and so those went to this fund. There's a park facilities reserve that maintains a small small opening balance. Those again are just parking court, tennis court maintenance funds. And then lastly, the city of Hood River administrates Mosier's utility collections for water, sewer, and transportation fees. The city earns a 4.5% service fee for that. And so this fiduciary fund exists to administer the collection and distribution of those funds, which generates just under $31,000 in revenue for the city of Belleville. So any additional questions?
Anything from the online? From Councilor Rivera or
No, thumbs up from Dan, thumbs up from Gladys. So I think that's it. So appreciate it again. The first question that you asked actually was also sent through as a question from Budget Committee. We will circulate the written response to that so you can get that answer in a little more detail. And then next week we will cover Public Works. And then we will also cover any sort of budget changes and things that we discussed and sort of with regards to the overall sort of finalization of the budget.
Chris, can you also mention urban renewal?
Oh, and then yes, the next week's schedule is slightly different. We will the urban renewal budget will start at 6. I believe that will take about an hour. We'll run that for an hour or so. And so then this budget committee will convene not earlier than 7 o'clock. Anything else? Right here.
anything else? I will call this meeting to adjourn. Budget, City of Hood River Budget Committee meeting to adjourn at 8:29.
Good job.
Thank you.